She spent her life serving justice from the bench, until one officer saw her as just another black woman in a car. What happened on that sidewalk flipped everything. Amina Ridley wasn't just any woman driving home that Thursday evening. She was a federal judge with 28 years on the bench, a former public defender, a mother of 2 grown daughters, and a widow who hadn't quite figured out how to stop working. Charleston's Civil Rights Symposium had invited her to speak, and like always, she had delivered with poise, clarity, and that sharp wit that made people listen. She left the event alone, driving her silver Honda Accord through a quiet neighborhood in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, ready to get home, heat up leftovers, and take off her heels. The sun had dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the road. She was 3 minutes from her driveway when flashing blue lights lit up her rearview mirror. Amina blinked. She looked down. She wasn't speeding. Her seatbelt was on. She'd just signaled at the last turn. Hadn't she? She eased the car to the curb, rolling down the window before the officer even stepped out. Hands on the steering wheel, polite smile ready. She'd been pulled over before, just like anyone else. Always stayed calm. Always cooperative. A white patrol officer approached, late 30s maybe, square jaw, close-cropped hair. He didn't greet her. He didn't smile. "License and registration," Amina responded gently. "Of course, officer. May I ask what the violation was? You didn't use your turn signal back there." She paused. "I believe I did, but—" "All right. 1 moment." She opened her glove compartment and retrieved her documents. As she handed them over, she added with a warm tone, "My name is Amina Ridley. I'm a federal judge. I'm just coming from a speaking engagement downtown." The officer didn't even look up. He took the documents and turned away without a word. That was odd. She waited. 3 minutes. Then 5. When he returned, his tone had changed. "Step out of the vehicle." She blinked again. "I'm sorry?" "I said step out of the car, now." There was no yelling, no cursing, but his voice had a charge behind it. A snap. "Officer, I don't understand. Is there a reason you're asking me to exit my car?" "You're being combative. Step out now, or I'll remove you myself." Her stomach sank. This wasn't about a signal. "Sir, I am not being combative. I have fully cooperated with—" "I'm not going to tell you again." Her hand trembled as she opened the door. Her heels touched the pavement, slow and steady. She kept both hands visible. "Turn around." People had started to look from porches. A couple across the street stood frozen near their mailbox. A boy filming from the sidewalk had already hit record. "What's going on?" she asked calmly. "I've done nothing wrong. You're resisting." She was spun around and felt cold metal tighten around her wrists. "Officer," she breathed, trying not to let her voice shake. "This is a mistake. My ID, my position—" "Doesn't matter," he interrupted. "You think your job makes you above the law." That's when she realized. He wasn't listening. He didn't care who she was. Or maybe he did. And this was about something else entirely. She glanced toward a young woman nearby who had her phone out, filming in silence. Their eyes met. Amina gave the faintest shake of her head. Not in shame. In disbelief. The sidewalk was uneven beneath her. The cuffs pressed into her skin. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She knew better. But inside, something twisted. But what neither of them knew was that this stop was about to spin far beyond control. Officer Chad Rusk kept his back straight as he called in the stop, his radio voice flat and practiced. He never once glanced back at the woman he'd just cuffed. Judge Amina Ridley sat on the edge of the sidewalk, her wrists bound tightly behind her, knees stiff from the awkward angle. Her car door was still open, her purse on the passenger seat, her ID lying visible beside it, clearly marked U.S. District Court, Southern District of Georgia. He hadn't even looked at it properly. She knew. She saw his eyes flicker over it, then away, like it meant nothing. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself. "Officer," she tried again, "if you'd take a second to verify who I am, you'll see this is all a terrible misjudgment." Rusk didn't reply. He was pacing now, hand resting on the butt of his gun, glancing at the nearby homes like he was scanning for threats. But there were no threats, just cell phone cameras, curious neighbors, silent judgment. A silver-haired man stepped onto his front lawn, cautious but firm. "Is everything all right?" he called out. "Go back inside, sir," Rusk barked, not turning around. The man didn't move. "That woman's a federal judge. I saw her speak at Burke Hall earlier today." That stopped Rusk, but only for a second. "Sir, I said go back inside." There was tension in the air now, not loud, not chaotic, but sharp, like the silence just before a storm. Rusk turned to Amina. "Why didn't you mention all this when I first pulled you over?" She looked up, calm but tired. "I did, twice." He stared at her like she was lying, like she was a trickster, a problem. He walked back to his squad car. She could hear him muttering under his breath. She shifted her legs slowly, trying to stretch. Her arms were going numb. Another officer would be here soon, someone older, someone who might know her. Maybe then this could be fixed. But 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No backup, just murmurs growing louder across the street. A young man in a Howard University hoodie approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked. Amina turned her head and nodded gently. "Please don't intervene. Just record." He already was. Rusk whipped around. "I said back up." The young man didn't move. "I'm standing on public property, sir. Back up or you'll be detained too." "Then I guess I'll be detained," he said, not raising his voice, not stepping closer. For a second, no one moved. Then a voice crackled on Rusk's radio. "Back up en route." He turned back toward Amina and sneered. "You think your title means anything out here?" She met his eyes. "I think it should." He paced again. More anxious now. He could feel the neighborhood turning on him. Not violently, not loudly, but with a kind of still defiance he didn't know what to do with. Amina didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. But her silence spoke volumes. When a second patrol car finally arrived, the door opened and out stepped Officer Larissa Brenner, mid-40s, Latina, serious-eyed and calm. She looked down at Amina, back at Rusk, then to the ID on the seat. "Is this hers?" she asked. "She said it is." Rusk replied, folding his arms. Brenner frowned. Picked it up. Read it carefully. Then looked back at Amina. "Ma'am," she said gently, "is your name Judge Amina Ridley?" "Yes." Brenner's face barely moved, but something behind her eyes shifted. She turned to Rusk. "You cuffed a federal judge?" She didn't comply. Got aggressive. "She's sitting on the sidewalk in heels, Chad." "I had reason to detain her." Brenner glanced back at the growing crowd. The phones. The quiet fury. "Unlock the cuffs." Rusk hesitated. Now." He finally knelt, fumbling with the keys. The cuffs clicked open. Amina rolled her wrists slowly, biting down the soreness. Brenner helped her to her feet. "I apologize, ma'am." Amina nodded. "I want your badge numbers, both of you." Brenner gave hers immediately. Rusk hesitated, but then muttered his own. "You'll be hearing from the court," Amina said, fixing her sleeves. But things didn't cool down. They escalated in a way no one could have predicted. She didn't cry in the moment. Not in front of them. Not in front of the neighbors or the teenagers filming from across the street. But the cuffs had left deep red marks on her wrists, and as Amina Ridley sat in the back seat of Officer Brenner's patrol car for safety, the sting settled in. Not just the physical ache, but the humiliation. She'd presided over murder trials, corruption cases, immigration hearings. She'd faced armed defendants, crying mothers, stone-faced prosecutors. But she had never been made to feel small quite like this. Not by a stranger with a badge who looked her in the face and saw nothing but a target. Brenner sat in the front, speaking quietly into her radio. She wasn't hostile, just professional, and maybe a little worried. Amina leaned forward slightly. "Am I under arrest?" Brenner didn't turn around. "No, ma'am." You're being detained for now while we sort this out. Detained for what, exactly? A traffic signal? Brenner hesitated. Officer Rusk said you were non-compliant. Amina let out a breath. You saw the footage. He never asked twice. Brenner finally turned to meet her gaze in the rear-view mirror. Her voice lowered. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a mess. And it's going to get worse. Amina stared at her. You know who I am now. Yes, ma'am. I know exactly who you are. The squad car door opened abruptly. Rusk stood there, clipboard in hand. You can go, he said flatly. No charges, just a warning. Amina stepped out slowly, straightening her blouse. A warning, she repeated, for failing to signal. After being cuffed, detained, threatened, Rusk said nothing. She turned to Brenner. Did you write the warning? No, ma'am. You don't believe I deserved one either, do you? Brenner looked conflicted. No, ma'am. The crowd had thinned by now, but several people were still watching. The Howard student, the elderly man from across the street, the woman with the phone. They'd seen everything, and they weren't going to forget it. Amina opened her car door and sat quietly for a moment before turning the engine. She didn't drive away immediately. She stared at her reflection in the rear-view mirror. Her face, calm and composed as always, but her jaw clenched tight. She pulled out her phone and texted her daughter. Call me in 10. Something happened. As she merged onto Highway 17, she passed by the police precinct without even meaning to. A wave of something bitter rose in her throat. Not hate, not even anger, just a deep, grinding weariness. Back at the precinct, Officer Rusk was already inside, at his desk, filling out a report with shallow details. He hadn't included her name in the narrative, just female driver. No mention of her credentials, no mention of the ID badge in full view. Officer Brenner hovered near the door, arms crossed. You know this isn't going to disappear, right? She said quietly. She made it worse, Rusk replied. She didn't do anything. You lost control. You know it. He glared at her. She thought she was better than me. She is, Brenner said without flinching. And you knew it the second she opened her mouth. Rusk threw his pen down. I followed protocol. You followed your own version of it. The tension between them hung heavy, but neither raised their voice. Meanwhile, footage from multiple phones had already made its way to social media. The Howard student had posted the clip with a simple caption. She said she was a judge. He didn't care. By midnight, it had been shared over 20,000 times. Local journalists started messaging the original posters, asking for interviews. One outlet pulled a photo of Judge Ridley from a 2018 article on judicial reform. They placed it next to a screenshot of her being cuffed on the sidewalk. Two worlds, one woman, a brutal collision. And it wasn't over. But the moment backup arrived, everything changed. And not for the better. By Friday morning, the video was everywhere. The local news stations hadn't even caught up yet, but Twitter had. Clips of Judge Amina Ridley, sitting calmly on a sidewalk in heels and handcuffs, had already been spliced with screenshots of her courtroom photos, clips from her speeches, and headlines about her past rulings. The image was jarring. This elegant, composed woman, humiliated in the street by a man half her experience and twice as defensive. At first, the police department stayed quiet. But silence doesn't travel well in a storm. By noon, WCSC out of Charleston had picked it up. By 2, CNN was calling it an incident that raises serious questions about how authority and race collide. Even for the most accomplished among us. Officer Chad Rusk didn't come in to work that morning. He'd been told to stay home until things cooled off. His wife had already turned her phone off. Their front lawn had 3 news vans parked across the street. Reporters had knocked on the door before sunrise. Inside, he paced. Angry. Not just at the fallout, but at the way people were reacting. To him, it had just been another stop. Another stubborn driver with too much attitude. But the world didn't see it that way. They saw the footage. The clipped tone. The refusal to listen. The power move. The cuffs. And they saw her. Judge Ridley hadn't made a statement. She hadn't posted anything online. But people were speaking for her. Lawyers, civil rights groups, former students, fellow judges. They all said the same thing. If this could happen to her, it could happen to any of us. At the courthouse, things were tense. Some clerks whispered in the hallway. A few employees gave her space. But others, especially the ones who'd seen her break glass ceilings over the years, rallied quietly behind her. Flowers arrived at her chambers with no names. A note on her door simply read, "We saw. We stand with you." She showed up to work as usual. Early. Composed. In black slacks, a blazer, and her signature red lipstick. Her court calendar remained full. No comment to press, no social media rants, just silence, and the full weight of her presence. But outside the courthouse, a small group had already begun to form. Mostly young people, some holding signs. Judge Ridley deserved better. Justice should wear no chains. The story spread further when it reached Baltimore, then Dallas, then Sacramento. It wasn't just about the incident anymore. It was about what it revealed. That power doesn't protect you from bias. That being educated, successful, and polished doesn't make you immune to being treated like a threat. And still, Amina said nothing publicly. Until the mayor called. "Judge Ridley, this is Mayor Patrice Langston. I want to extend my sincerest apology and offer to speak with you privately." She paused on the phone. "Thank you. But there's nothing private about this situation anymore. I understand. But I believe if you speak publicly, it could help shape the conversation." "I'm not interested in shaping anything right now," she replied. "I'm still processing being handcuffed for asking a question." There was silence on the line. Then, "If there's anything you need, there is," she said plainly. Accountability. The call ended. Meanwhile, Officer Brenner had filed an internal incident report, including a copy of her body cam footage. She didn't say much, just facts. But her report mentioned 3 things Rusk left out. That the judge identified herself immediately, that she was calm and cooperative, and that Brenner believed there was no cause for arrest. That report was leaked within 24 hours. By Saturday morning, the Charleston Police Department was forced to issue a press release, short, impersonal. It confirmed the identity of the woman in the video, acknowledged a pending review, and placed Officer Rusk on temporary administrative leave. But the damage had already spread. In local barbershops, in churches, on the radio. People were talking. At a farmer's market in Somerville, a group of elderly women handed out small flyers that read, "When they ignore the robe, they reveal the truth." But when the footage finally reached the internet, the storm began. Sunday morning, just before 6 a.m., Judge Amina Ridley's doorbell rang. She was already up. She hadn't really slept. She wrapped her robe around her and looked through the peephole. It wasn't media. It was her daughter, Simone, standing there with 2 coffees and a face full of concern. "I figured you'd be up," Simone said softly. Amina opened the door. "I wish I weren't." They sat in the kitchen, sunlight creeping in through the blinds, the smell of bitter roast filling the silence. Simone scrolled through her phone, shaking